Good afternoon, everyone. This is Professor Dan Jenkins from Steel Camel down here in Tampa, Florida. And today we got some informational technology and deliverables on solutions for corrosion and water problems in UST sumps. This is a nasty problem. Nobody wants to get into these sumps and deal with this corrosion. So today we're going to tackle it. And you can see right here on the screen, this is a sump in Miami, Florida. I took a picture of it and it was completely covered in barnacles. Brutal to get clean and prepared, but fortunately we have Steel Camel products to help us. So after that sump was done, they typically look like this. So today we're going to walk you through how you get the sump from nasty to clean and just keep it clean. We're here to help. So if you have any questions, give us a shout out at sales@steelcamel.com or 813-877-4665. So let's talk about corrosion in fuel systems and why this corrosion is more than just cosmetic. The corrosion in these sumps obviously adds to maintenance costs because someone has to repair them when things are damaged. People have to replace pumps, replace motors, replace piping, replace lids. All that kind of stuff is from damage from corrosion, which in turn takes time. And sometimes it takes time when you need the gas station the most, or you need your delivery trucks the most. And so you could have some critical downtime when you need your fuel system the most. There's also a lot of environmental and compliance issues around these UST sumps. For those of you who know 40 CFR 280, it's an issue. And while it's not all that much where there's fines and violations, it is an issue, particularly if you have a leak or a spill or a problem. Of course, we have worker safety, so nobody likes to go down the sump. It's dangerous down there. There's a lot of problems that could go down there, not to mention being run over. And when you have corrosion in the sumps, just like the picture here, it's a big indicator to me that you have the same problems in the tank. So let's get started and let's talk about how to tackle this stuff. Okay. So again, on the left, those are typical sumps that look nasty before Steel Camel comes around. And after Steel Camel, it's clean, it's easy to inspect, it's easy to work on, and it just makes it better for everybody, including the inspector who has to inspect these UST sumps. So Steel Camel is all about the picture on the right and not all about the picture on the left. Even though on the left, it's completely legal, it's completely in compliance, you can still have a lot of rust on it, but I think you're much, much better off if it's clean and neat and easy to look at. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what corrosion is. So we have these metals, and in this picture right here, we have about 5 different metals. We have some brass, we have some iron, we have some stainless steel, we have some copper, we have some alloys, and it's the process of being eaten. So the metal wants to go back to its original state, but it can't because it's eaten, it's being oxidized, and it expands, and it gets weak, and eventually it gets damaged. Okay, so corrosion is the process of metal being destroyed by a chemical action. The problems range from wet to dry. So I don't really care where you're located. You could be in dry Arizona, wet Florida, hot Texas, cold Maine. The problems are the same. Now, some sumps don't get as wet as others. Some don't have as much microbial growth as others, but they certainly have corrosion and they have damage. Okay. So again, you can see on this picture on the right, there's a lot of growth. There's a lot of microbial growth. There's a lot of things growing in there that's actually alive and spreading inside your UST sump. And again, we talk to people all over the country. It doesn't matter if you're in Colorado, you're in Arizona, you're in California, you're in Hawaii, you're in New Zealand, you're in Australia. All points in between have this issue. This picture on the right is a good one. That's actually from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. But look at that growth. Look at those barnacles growing. Look at those expansion of the metal and getting weak. Something you need to pay attention to. This one on the bottom right, you can see down there on the bottom, the metal's being eaten away. And there's chips, metal chips or rust chips on the floor. That's a bad sign that your metal is being eaten alive, literally, and weakening. That was from not Mobile, Birmingham, Alabama. And again, this one's from Miami. So it happens all over. What factors lead to corrosion in sumps? Why do they corrode? Well, let's look at it. So we got on the top, we have moisture. We'll talk about that in a bit. We have heat, so we have thermal cycling. So it's hot outside, the ground is cold. We have hot, cold, hot, cold. We have what's called thermal cycling, and your sump sweats, okay? This one down here on the bottom, it's called ionic contamination. So we have what are called ionics. In the gas station business, it is ethanol. There's alcohol and diesel, there's corn, there's palm, there's agricultural waste. All these factors give off some acid or some acid vapors, if you will. They mix with the moisture, it goes up and down, lands on your equipment, and voila, you have corrosion. And the final one is we have some current, we have some voltage, we have some electrons changing hands. So we have all these dissimilar metals in our sump, and we definitely have electricity going through our sump. We have fuel going through our sump. When we transfer all that stuff around, it accelerates the activity of the corrosion. So that's a good diagram to pay attention to. Okay, let's talk about moisture in the sumps. We've all seen moisture. If you live in the South here, like I do in Tampa, Florida, you come out, you'll see dew on your lawn, okay? I've been in Georgia a lot. There's a lot of dew on the lawn in the morning. It's nice during the day, drops down to 40 or 50 at night. Guess what? You walk out and you got dew all over your car. The same problem happens in the sump. The same problem happens in your shower. When you take a hot shower, your mirror is colder, you get condensation on your mirror. And the exact same problem affects the United States military. They have these planes, they sit outside, they got this open window or canopy, if you will. The sun beats down on it, cools down at night, condensates. In the daytime, it warms up, gas goes up, hits the canopy. In the night, cools down, gives condensation. Exact same problem in the sumps. Temperature swings. Okay, so those folks in Arizona, Las Vegas, Fresno, okay, don't have a ton of humidity, but they have big temperature swings, gets condensation, mixes with the vapors from the fuel, whether it's diesel or ethanol, doesn't really matter, produces acid, lands on the sump, and gets corrosion. Also, we have another problem. We have water that accumulates in our sumps. Sometimes it's water and fuel, sometimes it's just water. Okay, we'll talk about blocking the water a little bit later, but when you have water in your sumps, okay, you're damaging your sump, okay? You'll see, if you look at the bottom of these sumps, you'll see a lot of these rusted bolts, okay? Bad. And the water accelerates the humidity in there, or increases the humidity. So again, it gets hot, gases rise, cools down, comes back down. Guess what? You got corrosion on your sumps. So that one on the left, steel camel, one on the right, no steel camel, okay? We want the one on the left. Let's talk a little bit about acid vapors and how they get in, okay? A lot of the acid vapors start in the tank and they work their way up in the sump, and it's incredibly hard to stop. I don't care how good you are at sealing your sump and tight lids and tightness tightening or whatever you call it. It's hard to stop. And sometimes it can be blamed when you have these really, really fast drops, the pressure that builds up in the gas tank, you push up those vapors into your sump. Now you have the moisture, now you have the acid, voila, you got the corrosion. Let's talk about one more thing here. I'd like to talk to you about this little blue stuff that's grown on your copper tube. That is classic contamination. It's getting on the copper, it's acid, it builds up, and over time, it will lead to pitting of your copper tube, and that can affect your leak detector and other components in your sump, as you can see, okay? And it just weakens the metal and can lead to failure. And the last thing we want is failure in our sumps. So now we're going to talk or shift a little bit to what works and what doesn't work and how to avoid major headaches and expenses. I took this picture in Miami, Florida. They had bad corrosion at a major box or big box retailer. And the last thing you want to do is have employees working at night with the gas mask on, with all the ventilation in a sump at night. Just not the greatest thing in the world. So let's move again to what works and what doesn't work. Okay. The first thing that has been tried since about 2007 is people have been trying forever to put a barrier on, or a paint, or a coating, or an epoxy, okay? A rust stop, a Rust-Oleum, okay? Bad idea, okay? The sump vibrates too much. You're never gonna get a perfect surface, okay? And when the tech goes in there and he damages the paint, or he compromises the paint, it starts to peel, and guess what? It ain't gonna hold. The water gets in there, the moisture gets in there, and it corrodes underneath the paint. As you can see, the rust will expand and cause the paint to peel. Bad, bad, bad. And you do not want to be in a sump scraping paint off. Terrible idea. So don't paint it in the first place. One of the other big box retailers, 500 stores, 450 stores, they decided to paint all their sump components. Bad idea, okay? Really bad idea. First of all, it's really, really, really hard to get bolts off and nuts off and components off when you've sealed them up with paint. So that's a really bad idea to paint over your sump components. Because here's what happens. It simply doesn't hold up. The paint gets compromised. The moisture gets in there. The acid gets in there. The rust expands and starts peeling the paint. And there's no worker that I've ever met in my entire life that wants to go in there and scrape paint off or put paint removers in a sump. Bad idea. So don't use paint. Here's a guy who learned the hard way. This is a sump in Louisiana. They got this bright idea that they were going to put a two-part epoxy and spend all this time and money prepping the surface and covering the whole sump up with this two-part epoxy, including the nuts and the bolts and the fasteners and the connectors. Stupid idea, if you ask me. And look what happened. In about 8 weeks, the rust busted through the paint, compromised it, and they are worse off than when they started. Barriers simply do not work. And again, this contractor learned the hard way. So don't paint over anything. Okay. Another thing that people have tried that doesn't work is acid. They try to remove the rust with acid. Some people have seen that product on the left. I can't say what it is, but you know what it is. And some people know on the right is navel jelly. Bad idea. Terrible idea. Absolutely unsafe idea. You don't want to be in there with acid in an enclosed space for a couple reasons. One, it's not safe. B, it burns your skin. And 3, you have to rinse it off. And who wants to rinse off a sump and then suck the water out? Terrible idea. And the other problem with the acids is it leaves the acid on the metal. And if you don't get it all the way off, it keeps eating. And now you're decaying and degrading your metal, and it just slowly eats the surface. So bad idea. I'm not going to say stupid, but I just said it. But bad idea to put acid in your sump. All right, let's talk about what works. How can we get it looking like that and keep it looking like that? We got Steel Camel. We've been at this a long time. We've been at it since about 2013. We've come up with a way to get that sump looking just like that and keep it like that. So we have a product called Steel Camel. It's super friendly. It's easy to apply and it's easy to reapply. And it's very, very compatible with all the different metals that we talked about earlier, and specifically addresses corrosion causing factors, which we reviewed, which is the moisture and the contamination and the electronics, okay? And really, it's really not that messy. And again, for all those inspectors out there who hate looking at those corrosion sumps, Steel Camel makes your life a lot easier and easier to inspect when you can see everything, when you touch everything. And particularly the mechanics have to go in there and work on it. They love Steel Camel because it's super easy to work on. Okay, what are our 3 products? We have a corrosion inhibitor or a disruptor, okay? Corrosion prevention, it's all in one. There's Steel Camel on the left. We have some water blocking grease. It's actually called a gel. It's called Aqua Blocker, which is a grease with a kind of a diaper formula in there that blocks water, which we'll get to in a little bit. We also carry desiccant bags. We have very, very powerful desiccant bags to absorb the moisture. If anybody out there wants to talk desiccant bags and talk about super absorbing polymers versus silica gel, bring it on, okay? Steel Camel are subject matter experts in desiccant bags, and anybody who's using silica gel out there, we'd love to have a conversation with you. So those are just some of our products. But before we do that, before you get in the sump, we need to have some safety involved. So we got gloves, we got masks, we got rags, we got glasses, we got vests, we got all that kind of stuff. So safety, safety, safety. Steel Camel is big into safety. We use brass brushes, brass tools, brass scrapers. Anything that's non-sparking is good for us. So please make sure to use brass tools when you're down there, okay? You're going to need some disposable paintbrushes and a couple cups. One of the benefits of a convenience store, they have cups there in case you forget it. But you can go to Home Depot and buy 3 brushes for $5, or go to the dollar store and buy a couple disposable brushes. That's all you really need to get this started. If you are in one of those areas that they're really strict on confined space, like New York, okay, certain parts of California, you're going to have to check with your safety manager. It's debatable whether that's a confined space, okay, but some people distinguish it as a confined space. So if you do, check with your safety manager and make sure you're following all the rules, okay? Doing the sniffing test, getting the safety stuff, all that kind of stuff. So just check with your safety manager. Okay, so how do we get rid of the rust? Start scraping, okay? You don't have to get all the way to the base metal. You just got to get the flakes off, okay? You don't have to get all the paint off, even though I'd love for you to. It's not practical, but just get the rust off. Get the flakes off, okay? And then you wipe them up off the bottom. Some people put a rag down there or a little blanket, and they all come in the blanket, and you just tie it up and throw it away. It's actually non-hazardous, okay? Here's another good picture of a guy just scraping. Takes about 45 minutes, a lot of elbow grease. Can't really fit all the way down there. So just start scraping, brushing. Back in the day, we used to do some light sandblasting, but no one does that anymore. So just get there and scrape and knock the rust off, okay? And here's the process. So we go from nasty, and I mean nasty. Look at the barnacles growing on that thing. Look at the microbial growth, okay? That's all from the acid vapors, the moisture, the fuel creates its own little sludge. There's little microbes growing in there. They attach and they live in your fuel system. And again, if it's happening in your sump, there's a good chance it's happening in your tank. We kind of get it clean, and over the time, we get it converted to Steel Camel. It actually takes on a slightly darker tone or color. So don't be surprised if the metal starts getting a little darker. Nothing to worry about. And that's the progression. So once we get it off, we wipe down our surface with a wet rag, a damp rag, and we apply Steel Camel liberally. It's like maple syrup, okay? So you just kind of brush it off. It clings, it's thick, it's definitely oily, okay? And it clings to all your metal surface. So you want to do all your flanges, you want to do all your connections, you want to lubricate all your bolts. You definitely want to get the copper tube. You want to get all the piping, anything that's metal. And we've passed the sniffing test. There's nothing to worry. One of the nice things about Steel Camel is it doesn't evaporate, okay? So it doesn't burn your skin. It doesn't burn your eyes. It doesn't force you to get a headache. It doesn't make you choke. You apply it, and just like maple syrup, and there's almost zero evaporation off there, okay? So you put it on there, you wait about 10 minutes, hop out of the sump, come back in the sump, and brush another coat on there, and you're done. Very easy to do. If you are doing it on an annual basis, guess what? You don't have to go in the sump again. You can use what's called, on the left here is a Milwaukee sprayer. You just spray it, pump it up with the bicycle pump, okay? And you spray from the top, you mist it all in there, and you're done. So a lot of our customers have annual contracts. The first time I have to scrape, the second time, no scraping. They love it. Easy peasy, okay? And guess what? The sump looks like that. Easy to inspect, easy to work on, easy to remove the nuts and bolts, easy to remove the yoke. All that kind of stuff is easy with Steel Camel. Okay, back to corrosion prevention. Again, every metal's a little different. Some will get a little darker. It's okay, nothing to panic about. But we only affect the areas with rust. We do not affect plastic. We don't affect rubber, okay? And we really cling, and it keeps it nice and clean. And there's no polymer, okay? There's no polymers, no additives to interfere with the maintenance guy who may have to take it out one day. How about that? Think of your workers who have to remove these things. Brutal. right? You see people with cranes and all kinds of things taking these things out. They're super rusted. Why do you want to go through that? Use steel camel annually, and guess what? And particularly when you install them, and you know what? Your life will be a lot easier, or the worker who has to pull it out one day, it'll be a lot easier if you have steel camel on there. All right. And back to what it looks like. It stays wet. I'm telling everybody out there, we could stay up to wet for 14 months because when we put that lid on there, there's no air down there. It's just like putting the oil in a can. It's not going to evaporate, and we do not evaporate. So be prepared for it to look wet for 4 to 6 months. If you don't like it, if you don't like the wet look, no problem. Next time you're in there, just wipe it off. The corrosion inhibitor is already there. The oil that we wipe off is just the carrier. So any bolts or nuts will be lubricated, so you're safe. And guess what? Easy to look at, easy to inspect, easy to work on. Next, we have moisture building up in there. We have moisture building up in our sump because we have the lid on. Okay, now people have tried venting, much harder than it looks. And if you vent out, things could vent in. So I kind of don't recommend venting unless you really, really know what you're doing. You got an engineer looking at that, and he could guarantee that what goes out doesn't come back in. And I doubt he can guarantee that. Okay, so that's a steel camel sump right there. We got the nice desiccant bag in there, very powerful. So the moisture is actually attracted to the bag. The bag will start to swell or get hard or change shape. And when you're done with it, you can just throw it out. It's perfectly safe for the landfill. Okay, and it really helps prevent the 3 things from getting together and causing corrosion, which we talked about: the moisture, contamination, and the electric current, right? So we just put that absorbent pad in there, if you will, and the moisture is actually attracted to it and stays in the bag, does not drip on your sump. Super simple, super safe. Anybody wants to talk desiccant bags, give Steel Camel a call. Happy to talk with you. Okay, let's talk about the last section, which is blocking water. We want to block water. It's not the sump that goes bad. It's not the fuel that goes bad. It's actually the water that causes the fuel to go bad. It's the water that causes the UST sump to go bad. It's the moisture and that contamination. So it doesn't matter if it's gas, diesel, E85, or alternative fuels. We want to block the water from getting in the sump. Okay, so we employ 3 different types of water blocking gels. The main one is called Aqua Blocker. It's a grease, a really sticky, gooey grease, okay? And you just put it around the sump lids, and as it rains, boom, the water hits it, it expands kind of like a diaper, but you can still get the lid off, and the water is actually trapped, and a barricade is made so water can't get in. Very cool idea, okay? So we use it for sumps and spill buckets, okay? And we just block that water from getting in there. We block that water, particularly during a big rain, okay? Here's a good picture of it. It's a grease. It's kind of gooey, or it is gooey, very sticky and lubricant. And so you put the lids on, whether it's a sump or the spill bucket, the lid sits down on it. You can still get the lid on and off, but guess what? It blocks the water. We got some major chains using it, and they like it. It keeps the water out. It's temporary. Okay, it's not going to last forever. Okay. However, a lot of people use it when they do 30-day inspections. It's about $6 to $8 an application. Not bad at all. Okay. When you know you got a big storm coming, like we're here to live in Florida, we know we got a big storm coming. We know our parking lot's going to get a lot of water. Guess what? Put it on there. It's inexpensive, and it's super easy to apply, and it's pretty easy to clean up. You just need some rags and clean it up. Not too bad. Okay. For sump lids, over the last 2 years, we've been applying a gel in a pantyhose, or a burlap sack, if you will, kind of an industrial pantyhose, and it's called the dead snake because people open up the lid and they think they got a dead snake. That's why it's called the dead snake. Anyway, it's a water blocking gasket. It's more permanent, and it sits in there just like that. You put the lid on, it squishes it down, it conforms to the lid, and as water tries to get in, boom, we stop the water from getting into the spill buckets. We stop the water from getting into the substance. That's the gel. That's actually water, okay, and our diaper formula in one, and you just wipe it up, and it is non-hazardous. Okay, I've been to California. It's safe for the landfill. It's safe for the garbage. Okay, that's called the dead snake. And again, apply it before the big storms, and you know you're getting water, and everybody out there knows they got a leaker somewhere. Okay, so that's basically it, our program to deal with sumps and spill buckets to keep the corrosion in the water out. But if you need help with other things, we could help you with sludge. We could help you with hardware. We could help you with electronics. We could definitely help you with circuit boards, pin connectors, wiring harnesses, anything that would corrode in your gas station. And we have whole things on our whole programs just on water and fuel. And again, we're happy to help you. So I want to thank everybody for watching. We offer training. We offer training in fuel. We offer training in sumps. We do fuel testing. We can do a video in person. So really thank you for watching today. Again, this is Professor Dan Jenkins from Steel Camel, 813-877-4665 or sales@steelcamel.com. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.